My name is Sunit. I'm currently a senior at Dartmouth, majoring in computer science and economics. I'm also the head of community of Dartmouth Blockchain. For those of you tuning in, we're kind of co-hosting the Blockchain Acceleration Foundation and Ayoung from Near today, just to kind of speak a little bit about Near and understand the impact both on the ecosystem as a whole, as well as curated towards like college communities and college crypto organizations. I'm joined by Becky, who can, introduce yourself. So feel free to jump in, Becky.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Becky. I am the president of Bentley Blockchain Association in Boston. I also just launched a fertility health tech company, largely playing with tailwinds of Web3 and AI out of the MIT Media Lab. So largely invested in the college landscape over in Boston. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Ayoung, if you want to introduce yourself, what you do at Near, kind of how you got involved, and any other fun facts you'd like to share, that'd be awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for hosting me. I'm super excited we're finally getting to do this. I am Ayoung Jen, and I do developer relations at the Near Foundation. I've been on the team since May, so it's coming up on quite a few months now. It's been a crazy few months. And I mean, we were supposed to have this conversation back in December, if I recall correctly. But things did not work out because that one day, Elon decided to turn off spaces, if I recall correctly. But yeah, excited to be having this convo now.
Awesome. And yes, that's correct. Yes, back in December, Elon did decide to turn off Spaces, so that was a fun moment for sure. But yeah, it's super cool to hear that you joined Near just a couple of months ago, and hope it's going well. We'll have to kind of hear, yours as part of the developer relations team, kind of your introduction on Near, what problem you think it sort of uniquely solves in the crypto ecosystem, and for who, and why you decided to join the Near team, and how that experience has been so far for you.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I mean, I think this can actually be summarized pretty well by why I chose to join Near. So I would say overall, one of the things that is most top of mind for me as DevRel is the actual experience for a developer pleasant, because if it isn't, if there's a lot of challenges, if there's a lot of outages, etc., that's not an easy brand to represent. um, I would say for the most part, Near is probably one of the most stable, consistent, and scalable solutions out there. And so for me, it was a very easy kind of transition, and it was an easy decision to make to join the team. I would say, in terms of if you're looking to get into Web3 or if you're looking to dabble as a builder, Near is probably one of the easiest in terms of just onboarding. We launched a JavaScript SDK over the last summer, and so if you know JavaScript, guess what? You can write a smart contract. I think that's a huge transition to just being able to accommodate more devs. Before it was like you kind of had to know Rust or Solidity to be able to dabble in Web3, and we're really trying to work on making it a little bit more accessible. I kind of alluded to this, but we are definitely very scalable. We have super fast transaction speeds, and I know everyone says this, but we really do mean it. We're doing our best to keep things, very cheap and light, so that anyone who wants to start dabbling can. In terms of the technical specs, I mean, I think being a Rust focused chain, we are innately a little bit more secure than a lot of others out there. And so for me, like I said, I chose Near because I felt like it was a place where I could proudly be DevRel without being under the gun too much. And I think, if for anyone who's a developer out there, definitely consider Near. And I think we have other things on the pipeline that would suggest you should consider Near if you're looking to dabble and you're not necessarily a developer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of touched upon, some really, I think, interesting differentiations between other L1s and protocols with Near, namely like the JavaScript SDK, having that sort of Rust focus and, high TPS and such. I think it's particularly important, especially for onboarding sort of newer developers or people who may, be experienced developers, but not necessarily with like Solidity or other crypto programming languages, to kind of give them the ability through the SDK, or for example, a lot of protocols are launching APIs now to access that and build on top of that. Of course, I think Near's doing a huge push in terms of developer relations and as well as kind of building this ecosystem. Obviously, the Near Foundation was part of that. I believe it was like $800 million in October 2021, if I remember correctly, to kind of help push this forward. We'd love to hear kind of in your eyes, you mentioned some next steps and exciting things on the horizon. How do you think the onboarding of developers and the growth of the ecosystem is going? What's been really exciting about that? And what are you looking forward to on the horizon?
Yeah, of course. Oh man, there's so much coming up in 2023. I want to strongly encourage folks to, subscribe to whatever news outlets there are and, bookmark Near. We have a big focus and shift in terms of not just focusing on Web3 native like devs and community members, but also really just reaching out and being that bridge to the Web2 communities and people who maybe are Web3 curious, maybe they don't even know where to start, but we want to be that kind of onboarding project, I guess, to get people through the door. So I would say some of the biggest things that we're doing, and I don't know exactly how much I can say about it just yet, but we did have a blog post that went out recently talking about our blockchain operating system. So that's going to be kind of the shift we're working on this year. And so really thinking about not just Near as a layer one, but as a tool to really give people a way to explore everything that Web3 has to offer in a very streamlined, I guess as user friendly way as possible, really focusing on UX and but for developers also like the ease of actually building within the ecosystem and making sure that we have the right tooling, etc. There's, I think one of the biggest challenges that Web3 has in general is just like the the barrier to entry in terms of just not having enough information out there for people who are starting from like a baseline of nothing, like no real knowledge. They've just heard about Bitcoin here and there. The kind of barrier for those folks who are just starting from scratch, it's pretty high. I still kind of equate it to learning a new language in general. It's hard to formulate and understand paragraphs if you don't know the basic vocabulary. So I think there's a lot that, even like, what BAF is doing too, right? Like what you guys are working on in terms of like education and, kind of inserting this narrative into curriculums. I think that's huge. And then, also thinking about just the actual experience of being in the ecosystem. So whether you're a builder, the experience of building in Web3, it's not at all like Web2. It's not the most, I want to say it's just not the easiest experience, to put it frankly. And so what we're really trying to work on is figuring out how can we make that experience a little bit smoother and as akin to what somebody in Web2 might be used to. And then just trying to, once again, how do we really think about making that entry point into Web3 almost as like seamless as possible so that at the end of the day, like if we're talking about mass adoption, right? Like we need to get to a point where my grandma can be on Web3 apps and not realize that they're Web3 apps. Like we need to get to a point where that transition is that seamless. And I think we have a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline, especially around like blockchain operating system and near discovery. That's another term. Maybe you guys might want to bookmark here and there. I would say those two are kind of like our attempts at trying to lower that barrier to entry.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, when something me and Becky can speak to in terms of this sort of barrier to entry is obviously there's a huge, I would say gradual, but there's an adoption amongst college students and on college campuses towards crypto and blockchain. Of course, myself and Becky sort of lead initiatives at our respective blockchain clubs. And one thing we definitely noticed to your point is that it's very important to try to actively take steps and initiative to help bring this, sort of next cohort on, both for like the success of protocols, but I also think for just, understanding new ideas and kind of helping onboard a new set of users, to your point of having our grandparents kind of engage in crypto. Obviously, that's not going to happen overnight, and that might take years, if not longer. But one thing, for example, you can speak to is like how we even got connected to this opportunity. So, Dartmouth Blockchain and Bentley Blockchain, to my understanding, got connected to Blockchain Acceleration Foundation, BAF, which is kind of co-hosting this as well. And through that, we got connected to Near. Wondering if you could sort of speak upon some sort of college initiatives and ways Near or the Near Foundation, both the protocol and the foundation, are kind of bringing in this next wave of college kids and onboarding them. One of the things specifically is that one of the co-founders of Dartmouth Blockchain, alongside myself, his name's Charlie. He did the sort of Near student fellowship program previously and had great things to say. That's also how we got connected as well. So would love if you could talk about some of those initiatives, how Near is kind of working to sort of deconstruct some of those barriers to entry you talked about, and what you think's been working, what you think hasn't been working as well, and initiatives sort of hoping to implement in the near future as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, it's I would say education is definitely one of my like biggest passion points of what I do, and I think it's a tough nut to crack. If you think about it, there's so many resources out there, right? In terms of like, hey, there's like learn to earn, so many learn to earn projects coming out where they actively pay you crypto to learn about crypto. How cool is that? But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it's really about just kind of a shift in terms of mindset and priorities, really kind of stemming from the sense of ownership, right? I think what the younger generations are able to grasp better than, like, I don't know, people who are like well into their careers, or even people who are our grandparents age, right? Like, one of the things that we're really able to understand and grasp, as younger generations, is the idea of, hey, like, a lot of the services we use nowadays is not actually free. If we think about it, we're paying for it with our information, and in turn, it's like, what is the value of like our identities and data? And so I think that's a big shift in mentality that's going to just kind of lead the charge in terms of convincing people, perhaps, and the younger generations, the importance of why like decentralization is the way to move forward. Because the current model, no matter how you take a look at it, it really isn't scalable, right? Like, I mean, especially with a lot of regions and countries looking at like data privacy more closely, it really is that conversational shift and mindset shift of like, hey, people should be able to determine who gets their data and how they get to use it. And so if you think about it, like Web3, decentralization, blockchain, all of this is kind of trying to solve that, at a rudimentary level. And so I think there's that big aspect. I think there's also a sense of like the actual contributions people can make. Especially if you're like a fresh grad out of college, like, if you're graduating, or if you just recently graduated, for a majority of your life, you've probably been told as a developer the best way to kind of, like, get a start in the corporate world is to get a big job at a big tech company with a with a big name, and like, that's kind of what everyone's been told all along. But if you think about the actual impact that you're able to make as a fresh dev, in like the Web3 ecosystems, while we might not have the flashy brand names, the sheer amount of, like, I guess, change that you can be a part of, by being a part of these communities, by being a part of these projects, and just the general kind of, movement, I guess, if you will. I think there's so much more that you can be a part of. And I think it's really important what, BAF is doing, and, what each of you are doing, like Sunit and, Becky, on your campuses, of making this information more accessible to people and telling them, hey, there's a whole other world out there aside from, the big Web2 tech companies that you can be contributing to and be a part of. I think that's really, really important. So yeah, I mean, education is one of those things that's just constantly going to be like a work in progress. But I think, what we're able to do as a collective is really important. And just to kind of touch on what NEAR is working on, obviously we are trying to, broaden our outreach in terms of like the collaborations we're doing. So BAF being one of them for sure, and trying to work on inserting this narrative into curriculums, into the campuses, and just having a presence and having a voice. And then in terms of actual like things that NEAR is working on, oh man, I would say there's a lot of things that are coming down the pipeline in terms of how do we get the community to support each other, and how do we get the people who are very deep within the Web3 ecosystems to really be the ones to share their stories, to share their insights. Because I think one of the things that I really firmly believe in is that a testimonial, like a person being able to share their actual, use case of how they entered the Web3 ecosystem and how it changed their life. I think that is so much more impactful than like, me doing like a video on why you should pick NEAR. And so I think that's one of the things that we're really going to try to focus on, is really empowering our community. And hopefully that just kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling cycle of more people entering and more people being able to share their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a lot of those initiatives are really impactful. And to your point, I think you bring some interesting points of, the sort of duality between Web 2 and a lot of opportunities, organizations that college students or young adults and developers might want to join versus the kind of trade-offs and sort of some of the hurdles we've talked about earlier, entering some crypto organizations or working at these protocols and such. One thing that stood about your background was you've spent some time in a number of different roles in a lot of, traditional Web 2 tech firms, Twitter, Spotify, Reddit, but also in sort of a dev relations role at Skynet Labs, which, if I understand, is sort of like crypto hosting infrastructure. So, kind of wanted to hear on some of the points you just raised, the differences between entering Web 2 right after college versus entering Web 3 now, which is something more and more college students, particularly those that for example, our clubs are considering. How's your experience been different at some of these firms like Twitter, Spotify, and Reddit compared to working at NEAR and Skynet Labs? What's that really taught you about the ecosystem? And one of the things that people really, I would say, value about crypto is how most of these protocols are very creator focused and like developer first, right? Really trying to bring that and give them the utility they need. As a developer relations role, you really serve that conduit between multiple sorts of stakeholders. So well, let's kind of hear how that's been unique and been different from your sort of past experiences, and what stood out to you about the ecosystem as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting your question correctly, but I guess from the perspective of like myself as being a part of these organizations, is that right? And as well as like the onboarding experience, or is there something else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like your experiences in developer relations, and also kind of broadly to some of the points you talked about college kids trying to break into some of these industries and some of these companies.
Yeah, definitely. Man, I remember being a fresh grad and every job description saying, hey, like we're looking for entry level folks, must have 3 to 5 years of experience. And just thinking, gosh, like, how am I supposed to get experience if no one will give me experience? And so, I think one of the best things about the Web3 ecosystems and like as an industry in general is the fact that it's all open source. And so the best thing about open source is anyone can be a part of it, right? Just because you're not on someone's payroll necessarily doesn't mean that you don't have the opportunity for huge impact. And so if people are interested in getting involved, and this can be, whether you're actively in college or maybe you're a high school student, or, maybe you're a 20-year long, like, industry veteran in some other industry, like it doesn't matter. You can still get involved. And I think that's the beautiful thing about Web3. Like truly anyone is welcome to be a part of it. It's hard because in order to, like take that first step and really start dipping your toes in, once again, we've kind of alluded back to that, barrier to entry. But truly, I think one of the best things about Web3 is just like the community built around these projects and organizations, right? And so if you're interested in like how things work and how things should be run, from like an operational perspective or from a governance perspective, like you can look into DAOs and get involved that way. If you are a developer, yeah, start like looking at some code, just like I don't know, like just get started. Everything's open source, right? And so it's cool that anyone can become like a contributor from the get-go, and there isn't this like huge barrier to entry of like, oh, you have to meet certain criteria. And so like truly whatever we can do to lower the barrier to entry in terms of like like the actual education aspect, I think will make that just so much easier to get involved. And in terms of just like onboarding, I would say, one of the things that's very clear to me about Web3 right now is we are well in our like growing pain stage. And so, like a lot of companies and projects are just trying to figure out like how do we really like scale what we're doing right now for the masses, right? Like, and everyone talks about it right now. It's a crypto winter. And so while things are quiet and while there isn't as much like hype and excitement necessarily, like a lot of projects are doing great work in terms of just really focusing on building and adding value, so that hey, come the like bull market, like everyone's kind of ready and primed to welcome the masses. And so really focusing on like how do we make the experience better, how do we just make things a little bit more navigable. And so whereas I think with other like web 2 companies, a lot of the experiences I've had is just like when the vibes are off, the vibes are off, and there isn't really something to like look forward to necessarily. Whereas I think in Web3, and especially in my role, right, so much of what I do is getting to talk to external folks like yourselves, and talking to developers who aren't necessarily within our ecosystem already, or once again, Web2 folks who are just kind of dabbling in, are curious. I think there's just a lot that I can talk about in terms of like the possibilities, and that's all a part of the fact that we are sitting very well within our growing pain space. And so I would say one big invitation I would like to throw out to people who aren't necessarily developers. I know I'm DevRel, but I just want to make an invitation out to anyone who isn't, like a developer. Like just because you don't know how to code doesn't necessarily mean you can't get involved. Like there's so many opportunities right now, and if you have anything that you're really passionate about doing, I think there's an opportunity for you in Web3. And so I would definitely encourage people to consider Web3 projects and companies, as they're entering their like job force, or like workforce kind of phase of their lives, or if people are looking to make a shift. Maybe you've been working in web 2 for a bit and you're like, I don't know if this is the right vibe for me. Come check out Web3. Like I said, there are ways to get involved without necessarily having to quit your day job. You can just dabble along. But if you do want to make the jump, I think it's a really great time, because there's so much opportunity for you to make an impact as a contributor in the space, but then also just in general, like the sheer possibilities of this industry in general. Like if you really want to get excited about some new tech, right, like this is the time to get in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you touched upon community, which of course we also recognize as one of the differentiating factors in this industry. But I think what you uniquely touched upon that's pretty interesting is this idea of the growing pains. The fact that yes, that leads to a lot of challenges and has the difficulties with adoption and such, but it gives a lot of great opportunities for college kids and younger people to get actively involved, and ways for different stakeholders, whether it's creators, developers, those in the more like DeFi and economic side, to help shape the protocols and the ideas themselves, and really what the future and adoption looks like. Now that we've kind of touched a little bit upon like why near, sort of your experiences, and some more broad questions. I'll sort of switch gears and hand it off to Becky, who can, sort of take it away on some more granular questions and kind of dive into the details a bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you. This has been a great conversation so far, and so many amazing golden nuggets that you've shared. And I think a theme that keeps coming up is that there are just so many opportunities here in Web3. And I think one thing that I love that you mentioned is, empowering community, lowering barriers to entry. Near prides itself on from the get-go having easier onboarding, ease of use, and for developers and users. And I think right now at our club, we are really focused on preparing students for this evolving landscape, and using the tech for what we call giga-scale impact. So I'm incredibly curious to thinking, like how you mentioned, thinking beyond what we're told about big tech companies and big names. Um, I'm curious, what are the largest ideas or, I guess, impacts you think Near can enable? What opportunities can be created from, students on college campuses right now?
Yeah, wow. And this is the thing, right? Like my creativity only goes so far, and honestly, most of the like brilliant opportunities and ideas that I've heard of are just from conversations that I've had with other people. I'm not a super creative person. And so, I think some of the most exciting concepts and like applications I've heard of are, really around like healthcare is one of them, like healthcare and this idea of like identity and having people just be in charge of their own data from that aspect. Obviously there's a lot of nuances there, and I think like advances in ZK proofs and like not having to have certain information on chain to be able to leverage it in Web3 context. Like I think that's a really cool kind of new field that people are playing with, and I'm personally someone, I have a lot of like I go to the doctor a lot for a lot of reasons, and so the fact that I have to like beg my doctors for my information to give to another doctor, it just baffles me. And so, I look forward to a world one day in which I actually own my own data, and I'm able to give it to whomever I deem fit. And also, it's like, secure and it's my own, and it's not, at risk of somebody like getting access to it because they social engineered someone into giving them their password. So there's that aspect. I think there's a lot of possibility in terms of, I mean, I kind of alluded to this before, but there's a lot of work we can do in terms of just the UX, like the actual experience of being in Web3, as an end user, as a developer. And so there's a lot that I would love to see around like developer tooling. Like I said, there's a big kind of there's a big discrepancy between the experience for a developer in Web 2 versus one in Web 3. And so I would love to see more in terms of web, like dev tooling. How can, maybe even just things to kind of emulate what we have in Web 2, or like perhaps, taking our learnings from Web 2 and then making them better. So there's that. I think there's a lot, of untapped potential in terms of just having it as like a way of easily sending finances to someone. I know a lot of people still use like Venmo and, like Cash App. And I was literally talking to my friend the other day who's not a US citizen, and she's coming to visit, and we're like booking hotels together. And she was like, oh, so I figure like I'll like get cash from the ATM and I can give that to you and we can split it that way. And it's like, actually, we could just use crypto. Like, I think making that a bit more accessible to people, like that's, once again, something that no one's really like tapped into as like, hey, here's a crypto tool that literally makes it super easy and without the, like the mumbo jumbo of like some of the other wallets out there where it's like, oh, you have to be an investor and a trader. Like, no, just literally make a like a transactional like wallet where people just send each other money and that's it. Like, there's a lot around like branding and I think just, the stories that you're able to tell with the products and like, there's just, it's been a very technical space up until very recently. And so I think there's a lot we can do with even just like the tools that we have existing. But yeah, like the technology also, there's a lot that's actually catching up to the possibilities. And, like for example, with like ZK stuff, I would say we're like just starting to really scratch the surface at Near in terms of what it's able to do for our ecosystem. And so there's just so much. It's overwhelming, really. But I think, yeah, like really thinking about how do we leverage this technology to actually make it valuable for humans and not just like trading and making more money, but like actually being of good to society. I think that's kind of like a general direction that I see a lot of things kind of going into, and something that I'm personally really excited about.
Absolutely. We are rapidly evolving. I think we're now at ZK rollups, and expanding now. So I mean, I'm incredibly interested. So we talked a little bit about, opportunities in healthcare, digital identities, assets. I'm interested too to share like opportunities right now, for students to hop off the call and start working with Near and building on Near. And I know that you guys pride yourself on being an easier developer experience and user experience. So could you walk us a bit through the developer experience, tools Near has, and for terminology like SDK, could you define that for us?
Yeah. Oh wow. So yeah. First off, I think if anyone's interested, just go check out. It's So we have near.social. It's once again, appear aesthetically, it's not the most pleasing quite yet, but it is a kind of step one of many to what we're hoping to achieve this year across the board from Near. So this is just like a kind of, hello world kind of situation of what's coming. So Near Social is like I mean, yes, it's like a social network at the moment, but there's just so much more that we're hoping to achieve with it. And so it's, if you're at all curious, I would say take a look and just see like what's on there. One of the things that I want to point out is our gigs board. So if you're a developer, and have any interest in dabbling around, so the Near Gigs board might be a great opportunity for you to get involved. And like I said, it's all found on Near Social right now. We're working on the UI, I promise. But yeah, we have a lot in terms of like small opportunities. Like they're essentially bounties, right? Like they're bounties, and we're just any ideas that people have that they would like to see, there's a bounty, and you can submit your own bounties and become involved. Like that's, I think, like a very tangible way of getting involved. And also just to touch on SEK, so a software development kit. So that's just a collection of like tools and kind of like whatever you might need to be able to develop in a certain situation or for a certain project, whatever. And so we do have like the JavaScript SDK that we were mentioning. And so if that's something you've already learned, you can get started writing smart contracts, which I think is something really cool to say because not a lot of people can say that. You know, One of the things that I would really, really strongly recommend people to kind of take a look at is the Near Social Gigs board. We also have something called Near Crowd, which is, so both with the Gigs board and Near Crowd, it's really this idea of like, let's give people an opportunity to contribute with their actual like skill sets to get involved and get into the kind of like crypto ecosystem without like um, having to like pay their way in. So like having to like buy actual tokens. And there is like this added layer of like the learn to earn. There's, also a lot of apps out there where you can like walk to earn, or, there's like so many blank to earn kind of options out there. But near crowd and the near gigs board, truly just, hey, if you want to tinker around and you see something that you can tackle, like do it. I really want to push that as kind of like an easy way of just like getting involved off the bat. Get on your social, and it's like I said, the user interface is not the best right now, but we're working on it. And I think once again, it's open source. So if there's anything that you're like, I think this could be better, like, take a stab and, please contribute to the actual product. I I think this is, like a very obvious way of getting involved. But then again, there's so many other ways. You can join a DAO, you can just play around on like various forums, and there's so many discords that you can join. If there's anything that you're personally like really interested in, we have tons of like projects and groups that are leveraging Web3 for those purposes. So if you're really into like, I don't know, like regen is like a big kind of aspect that I'm really passionate about. Education is another one I'm passionate about. There's so many resources out there, so many groups. So just, I don't know, like a Google search is good. But if you want to get involved with Near, like definitely check out our Discord, check out, our gigs board, Near Crowd. And like Awesome Near is also a great place to kind of just explore our app ecosystem. Yeah, like this question's just like overwhelming because there's just so many things. But yeah, I would say Near Social, check that out, Near Crowd, and Awesome Near if you want to just explore what dApps we have available.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think you've shared enormous value in this last 40 minutes for people who want to explore the space, talking about DAOs, Discords, groups that you can join. There's endless opportunities to, explore the space. So let's narrow it down a little bit more. I think if you were to talk to someone who wanted to break into the space, what would be your actionable playbook so that students can hop off the call and hit the ground running? So I'm curious, what would be, an actionable playbook that you would create for someone wanting to break into the space?
Yeah, sure. So I would say like do a bit of like a self-awareness check, or maybe just like just ask yourself like, what am I actually curious about, and why do I even want to explore this? Because maybe it's just like a feeling of like I should know a little bit more about it, or I'm just purely curious, I don't really know. But if that's the case, then yeah, like I said, just do a little like dabble around on like Awesome Year, see what's available, or you can like just enter our Discord and see what people are talking about. If you have, but I guess the flip side of that is if you have something that you're actively really passionate about, right? Like maybe you are really into, seeing how we can make things better for the environment using blockchain technology. Like if that's kind of your jam, like Open Forest Protocol is a big and near initiative that's focusing on like, how do we actually help people think about like, I think, let me take a step back. So yeah, as you're asking yourself these questions about like, what am I interested in? What are the things that I'm passionate about? Like, I think it's also fair to say like, you can start looking, like for example on Awesome Year, or join any like layer one's Discord and just dabble along and see what people are talking about, and using that as a discovery point and way of getting involved as well. I think for me the kind of trigger point was like I was really into security beforehand, and one of my professors talked about like how important it is to like the future of security that we like seriously consider blockchain. And I was like, huh, maybe I should start looking into it. And down the rabbit hole I went. And so I think if there is something that you're already interested in, and that has like a Web3 kind of offshoot, like definitely dig into that. The big recommendation I would give to people is find a community. And so once again, if you're really into like governance aspects, or like, how things should be run, thinking around like, like processes and how we should, how a governing body should finance certain initiatives, whatever, right? Like then join a DAO, find your community, and just kind of learn from those people, because as of now, like I said, the education aspect is really, really difficult. And I think that's still a problem a lot of us are trying to solve. And so, my biggest recommendation for people who are listening to this, and if you want an actionable item like right away, is do what you can to find your community. And so that's why I was kind of suggesting, you figure out like what you're interested in. But if you want to just enter a random community, or like a larger community that can help you kind of narrow down where you might be interested in, like I said, join the Near Discord. You can join any other Layer One's Discord. You will be able to hear so much in terms of what people are working on, what initiatives there are. Just get involved, find your community, learn from people, ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question in Web3. I truly, truly, truly want to like hammer that home. Like there is no such thing as a stupid question. And so just, I don't know, take the plunge, don't hesitate. But yeah, I think like the ideal funnel, if we're talking about like 6 months from now, and we've had more of a chance to like actually really put these kind of thoughts onto paper, is somebody sees a Near related article or a tweet or something, and they're like, oh, let me go check out Near. They're able to kind of figure out, oh, like, what is the best kind of like niche for me, based on who you are or what you are interested in. So maybe you're a developer who's really interested in actually contributing to the protocol or something, like then you should have your own track. And being able to have that kind of so once again, this kind of gets into the territory of I don't know what I'm allowed to share, but Near Social, like I said, is kind of a first version of what's to come, and all of that that user journey, of that developer journey, whether you're coming in fresh or you're coming in with some like background knowledge, like all of that will be something very seamless. But like I said, we're not quite there yet, and so. For now, just do your best to find a community. And a lot of the communities do live on Discord. So if you don't have a Discord, start one. And pretty much any website or any like project's website is going to have a link to their Discord. So join the community, ask some questions. But if you have no idea about what you're interested in, like I said, join the Near Discord. We'll help you out for sure.
Absolutely. Amazing points. I think that we're amazing at science, but sometimes we kind of stink at social coordination. So I think Web3 can be so fundamental for social coordination, creating communities, shared ownership, and everything of that sort. So with that being said, I'm gonna pass it back to Sunint, who will kind of cater us to our outlook for 2023, where year's headed, and where we can see people building for 2023.
Perfect. Thank you, Becky. Yeah, so kind of as you mentioned, really just kind of wanted to wrap up and spend the next couple of minutes on the sort of outlook for 2023 and beyond. And then if we have time left before 9:30, we can dive into some audience Q&A. In terms of just, pretty broad overall question, want to leave it pretty open-ended here, but would love to hear kind of what you have in mind for 2023 and beyond for the Near Foundation and Near Protocol. Maybe from the perspective of like developers, users, the protocol itself, but also from other eyes, right? Like, how do you think the DApp ecosystem is going to look like on there? Are there any sort of like trends or venture deals that are exciting for Near or even otherwise? And from political regulation and navigating the current down cycle, if there's any macro ideas you think are going to impact us positively or negatively, and how Near sort of intends to navigate that. So pretty open ended, but kind of want to leave it up for there for your interpretation and go from there.
Yeah. Oh, this is a loaded question for sure. I'll tackle some of the easier ones. So I would say, in terms of what we are really focusing on for this year, is that, once again, that being that bridge between Web 2 to Web 3. So whether that is partnering with existing brands or Web 2 companies to kind of help them navigate their entry into Web 3. So kind of from the BD aspect, like I know our BD team is constantly talking to like 100 and some projects at any given time, projects and brands, to see if Near is like the right kind of project or right layer one for them to make that transition. So there's that aspect of onboarding users. In terms of developers, once again, I think we're just trying to really figure out what is the best developer experience, and making sure that there are plenty of engagement points and touch points, not just in terms of like, hey, like if you want to, build a project on Near, this is what you do, but also other ways to contribute, whether that is information or just being a part of the conversation, just other ways of getting involved, aside from just having to like full send quit your day job. There's obviously like the gigs board, and just this idea of bounties, but not just like the bounties that we think of today, which I don't know how many people have done like hackathons or bug bounties and stuff, but a lot of them are very like technical when you think of a bounty. And so really thinking of bounties as kind of like freelance work that you can do. And so once again, getting a lot of people in through the door, by just giving them an opportunity to leverage their skills to earn their way in. There's a lot we're doing as an org around usability, the actual like experience of being someone who's navigating through the Near ecosystem, just making discoverability around the various apps and everything just way easier. And in terms of the app landscape and what we have, I would say like there's a lot of exciting projects once again around like dev tooling that I'm really excited for personally. And then some of the other exciting things coming down the pipeline, I would say like look for things around like gaming. I think gaming's a really cool kind of asset or aspect of the ecosystems that have, it's just kind of getting started, because if there's anything about gaming, it's usually like the development time is really, really long. And so the fact that there's, people who've been kind of dabbling away, and they're, about to like launch some really cool projects. I would say gaming, anything around, being able to kind of use your Web 2 data and Web 2 identity in Web 3. Like, I think that's something also exciting that I'm looking forward to seeing more of. There's a lot moving in that direction. This idea of like a DID, right? Decentralized like identity, something that follows you around also amongst various ecosystems. I think there's a lot just kind of around that. And at the end of the day, I think they all kind of funnel up into just usability. I think one of the biggest questions right now, from like, from my perspective and from a lot of other like DevRels that I've gotten a chance to speak with, it's around like, the chicken and the egg of, how do you bring devs in if there aren't a lot of users right now? But then also like there aren't a lot of users because there aren't a lot of apps available that speak to their needs. And so I think it's really flipping that narrative and just saying like, look, there's plenty of opportunities. And so how do we show devs the like demand and like where there are opportunities in terms of what we've seen, in terms of gaps within ecosystems, and then also showing users like, hey, there's plenty you can be using. And also maybe even like they don't even know that it's a Web3 app, right? Like just making that user experience so seamless that they aren't even aware that they're leveraging a DApp versus a regular app that's very Web 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And that all sounds super exciting. And I know I asked a pretty, pretty broad-based question. So kind of we'll dive into just the last sort of specific question for the roadmap, and then we can transition to Q&A. I saw on one of the sort of articles Near published, obviously one of the big things on the roadmap is phase 2 of sharding, which is scheduled to come around Q3, Q4 of this year. And then phase 3, which is dynamic resharding, sort of into 2024. I saw a few other sort of technical developments there in terms of goals or meta transactions, zero balance account, and global storage. Would love to hear kind of from the technical side and from the protocol development side, if there's any of these you're particularly excited about, how you think these are going to impact in your ecosystem, and what benefits they could bring to developers, users, or sort of anyone else who might be impacted positively.
Yeah, of course. And I think the exciting thing about all of these developments that we have on the protocol roadmap is that they are all kind of feeding into this usability aspect, right? And so, like, not to downplay the importance of like protocol development, because obviously that is like the engine that keeps things running. But I think the big shift this year, with during 2023, is going to be the shift to the blockchain operating system as our narrative, more so than being a layer one. So, all of those protocol developments, dynamic sharding, that's super exciting. And, that's going to drastically increase our scalability and the ability to actually, support devs, kind of based on whatever they need at whatever need they have at whatever given moment. And any demands on our network, like we'll be able to handle it. And like I said, up until now, we've never had any issues either. And so hopefully we can keep that track record. But it really is going to be about like that usability layer that we're focusing on building on top of all of that, around like the OS aspect of, if you think about like what Windows did, right? Or like what the iPhone did for the ability for anyone to have everything they need at their fingertips. That's really what we're trying to focus on this year. And so I think, to your point, like yes, we have a bunch of stuff on the protocol roadmap. We're always focusing on how do we improve our technology and how do we kind of stay ahead of the curve in terms of speed and scalability, just the like reliability of everything that we're building. But then, like I think what Near Foundation is especially focusing on, and as well as like our protocol side, I think is how do we translate all of that into something that is truly usable and scalable for like everyone. And we mean that like truly like everyone, not just people who are developers or people who are into Web3, but just for anyone, and making that as like easy of an experience as possible. And so, everything we're working on under the hood is truly for that larger kind of vision and mission that we have this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched upon a really important point of this sort of, like intersection between both technical developments and how that impacts the community, and it kind of being like a positive feedback loop to drive more adoption and usability, and how, it should be a core focus of developers to focus on the added utility and really how this helps to uh, bring the protocol to more people or add additional functionality, but also from the user side, how to actually take advantage of this and, really maximize the features and development that's offered for each protocol, whether it's Near or otherwise. I know we're coming up in time in a couple of minutes. I'll hand it over to Becky now to sort of facilitate a Q&A. Would love to hear from the audience if you guys have any questions. I know we've touched upon a lot of topics here, so on any of those or anything else you have in mind. So thank you so much once again. And yeah, I really appreciate the time as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Let me look in the chat. And if not, in the meantime, do we have one? I'd love to know how can people, just mention again, how can people find Near, and how can they get connected and start building on Near? So you can share those while we look for Q&A.
Yeah, definitely. So, obviously, start by following the Near Twitter handle. A lot of our like updates and announcements come through this for sure. Twitter, is where crypto lives. And check out Near.social. Like I said, the current state is not super slick, but we're getting there, and that's going to be a lot of where our initiatives are going to be published and pushed on, as well as that's going to be kind of like the medium on which the advances and kind of like updates, you know, initiatives happen. So definitely check out near.social, create an account, create your wallet. If you're a developer, go check out our docs. There's just, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge on there. I think, if you ever are actually exploring through it and you feel like something is wrong or maybe outdated, we do our best to keep things updated. But hey, there's another way you can contribute. If you see something that's like, oh, actually, this didn't work, but I figured out how it does work, then let us know. You can make a pull request and submit an update. It's a living, breathing thing. So check out our docs. Um, you know, there's obviously our Discord. I think that's an easy way to get involved and really get the full fire hose effect of the Near ecosystem. And I was mentioning earlier, Awesome Near is a great way to kind of explore our app ecosystem. And we also have Near Week, which is kind of like our amplification channel for all things Near ecosystem related, any exciting updates about our projects or new projects entering the ecosystem, building on Near, etc. So there's a lot of ways that you can find us and get involved, but hoping to see new folks getting introduced to Near soon.
Yes, of course. And any events you have coming up, it looks like where people can get exposure to Near, perhaps ETH Denver, anything else you have coming up.
100%. So we are going to have a big roll at ETH Denver. We're doing the opening party first off, and so that's a big deal. So we're really excited to be at ETH Denver. It's always been one of those like big events for us, and last year was big. This year is even going to be bigger. We have a bunch of bounties, a lot of them related to Near Social, and so if anyone's interested in kind of interacting with us there, please come find us. We're also going to be at Consensus this year in Austin, Texas at the end of April. We have a bunch of Near folks all around the world in various, like geos and regions. And so if you're interested in finding a Near person within your community, like I said, come to our Discord. You can kind of navigate and find people that you're close to. I would also love to give a shout out to like our US group, Banyan. They're doing a lot of great work in terms of having on the ground kind of events every week. And so we are very active in San Francisco, thanks to the Banyan folks. And we also have a lot going on, I think, in like New York. So if you're in either of those locations or close by, definitely check out, what there might be going on. And, I think for the rest of the year, we're really going to try to work on kind of getting the organic kind of grassroots excitement going. And so we're going to be doing a lot more from where we are right now too. So just keep an eye on like the Near socials and by socials I mean like Twitter and Near social itself as well, but definitely Twitter to see if there's anything going on in your neighborhood.
Amazing. Well, they all sound like can't miss events, so we'll all have to book tickets to ETH Denver. But it does look like we are coming up on time. This has been incredible, and I thank you all for coming. Dartmouth Blockchain, Bentley Blockchain, Near, and Bath, of course, for putting this together. If you guys want to say any closing words, the floor is yours.
Just for Bath, just wanted to say, thank you so much everyone for coming. feel free to follow us and become a BAF member to keep up with our opportunities on meetup like that. And really thanks Sunint, Becky, and Ayoung for the meetup.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, Beth for hosting, and then Sunit and Becky for this awesome conversation. I'm really excited for younger folks to get excited about Web3. Like I said, I think there's so much opportunity, and so I appreciate the chance to get to chat with y'all. And obviously, if anyone's interested in kind of learning more, my door's always open. And definitely looking forward to running into some folks in real life one of these days.
Hey guys, I just thought I'd pop in here. Appreciate you guys hosting the space. And I just wanted to kind of ask a question. Actually, first, I heard you guys talking about healthcare data and just like facilitating the ownership of that. And I mean, yeah, right on. Like, I think data ownership is definitely the most important aspect of Web3, and then facilitating like that generative economy that aligns the interests of buyers and sellers and shareholders. And I think that's what Web3 is really like the bread and butter for. But yeah, I had one question. So if you guys had to give advice to college students that they don't have any developer experience, they don't know how to code, they don't have technical experience, but let's say they're very well plugged into communities, and they have a lot of great ideas. How would you advise a full-time college student with maybe a part-time job? How would he go about like a startup, for example? Could you kind of run me down like the general framework for going about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe Cindy and Becky, you guys are more, fit to answer this question. But I think from my perspective, definitely like these big conferences like East Denver, and there's one in almost every major metropolitan area in the United States. Definitely go to one of them. One big aspect of a hackathon is actually the matchmaking process, and so there might be devs who show up and they don't necessarily have an idea, but they have the technical skill set. Well, you put your heads together and you come up with an idea and actually put it to practice. And I think one of the things that we're working on the near side is eventually getting to a point where, like no code app development. Like, I mean, once again, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, y'all, but there is a push to kind of have the ability to build projects with very little to no code. And so just know that that's kind of on our radar, because yes, obviously there's a bit of a barrier to actually being able to help build things if you don't know how to code at the moment. And so that's something we're working on. And like I said, like join a Discord and kind of just bring ideas and say like, hey, this is something I'm really passionate about and want to work on, and I have this skill to provide. Like, is anyone interested in kind of building this with me? I think there's a lot of possibilities, but just kind of like putting yourself out there, whether that's in person at a conference or a hackathon, or online on some of the forums and like various social kind of channels. I think there's definitely opportunities for you to find people who can help you build something right now, until we're able to give you the possibility to do it with no code. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I just want to echo what you said and add on to that just a bit. And anyone, I know we're going over, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Telegram after this. But I think too, a lot of it in the beginning is validating that people want your idea. So you actually, in the beginning, might not even need to develop anything, even though you have wonderful resources at Near. But you could even create a landing page under a fake name that's a different name if you don't want to, create, basically do anything under the name that you actually want your company to be. And, have just basically test the idea or create a Figma with front end design and print it out and show it to people, say, is this something you want? And get, actual demand. Like if 9 out of 10 people want it, maybe then look to see and find a developer or create a landing page. And I don't want this to sound wrong, but have people put in their credit card, and then when they do it, say, okay, never mind, like credit card's not working. But basically, what I'm really trying to get at is just get demand from people, that people want what you're buying, and just test that there's demand for your ideas. And before you even have to start finding a developer or doing a single line of code, just really testing that people are in need of what you want, what you're creating.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. And I would love to connect like different projects, because I do a lot of business development for a lot of different projects in Web3, building like pretty robust solutions, like the no code app builder. Sounds like I'd love to connect you guys to like Enter the Void for that, because if we could like somehow create a no code software as a service app builder into an NFT, like that would, like a software as a service, like a smart NFT per se, that would be really cool. I'd love to kind of help out wherever I can on that. Regarding like a startup, so like with this, what if you have like a really big idea, and like you have a pitch deck for it, you've kind of drawn up the general I guess framework for the user interface, and how the protocol would work. What would be the next steps in that? Just trying to go to as many hackathons as possible. And what if you're kind of like, you're a broke student and you're kind of in the middle of nowhere? I live in Conway, Arkansas, and so not a whole lot of people know where Arkansas is, but it's nowhere near any blockchain clubs or hackathons or any events, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of limited to online resources.
Yeah, I mean, first off, yeah, definitely reach out to me, Miguel. Yeah, like DM me, and we can figure out a solution for sure. I would say join some discords. Like I said, if there are some layer ones that you're interested in, obviously Near should be at the top of your list. But join the discord. Like I said, just throw some ideas out there and say like, hey, I'm looking for someone to help me build this or whatnot. But I think what Becky said as well, in terms of like just actually testing out traction, I think that's brilliant, very clever, I would say. Just to like see if there's demand. And then yeah, like definitely like hit me up and I can kind of give you pointers. But just putting yourself out there, I think if it's a matter of like finding someone to help build, like I said, you just need to find somebody who sees what you're trying to accomplish, and you guys vibe, and then y'all are able to build something together. But yeah, definitely reach out and we can see if there's a solution at Near for you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much, and sorry for going over the time.
No worries. Thank you so much for your questions.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you hosting the space.
Perfect. Well, if that's everything, should we just call it here?
Yes, perfect. Well, I close the meetup now. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.